Hi, this is Scott with Specter Gear. For today's product spotlight, we're going to be taking a slightly closer look at the Cqb 3-point sling. In the video I did where I compared the three different types of 3-point slings, I briefly discussed some of the salient characteristics and operating functions of each of the slings. In this case, I want to point the spotlight directly at this sling for those folks that are interested in this particular sling and go ever so slightly more in depth on it. To begin with, we are only going to be discussing the sling itself. I'm not going to be talking much about the attachment methods at the front or the rear. They vary so widely from weapon to weapon that I will cover those in specific weapon system related videos where we talk about how the sling would work, for instance, for a very specific weapon like a Mini 14 or an M1A or an AK-47, and we'll cover the attachment points there. The first thing to mention about this particular sling, as I did discuss in the other video, this is an old design. It dates way back to farther than you might think. It goes all the way back to the 1800s as a cavalry sling that was made for the Specter carbine. It was commercialized in the 60s, the very early 60s, by HK with their G3 rifles and their MP5 submachine guns. And a couple of other commercial entities have manufactured it, including us, over the years. This was the first sling we started making back in 2001, and we made it continuously for the past 20 years. We sold many thousands of these over time. And it's still a design that sells well to this day, believe it or not. You hear often about the 3-point sling being dead. I hear that all the time. According to QuickBooks at my company, 3-point slings are still alive and kicking pretty darn good. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a dead design. These are still, again, fairly popular with a lot of folks out there. It's a good, straightforward field sling. It's a good range sling. I will say one thing that it doesn't do well is it's not designed for cross-shoulder transition. It can be done, and I will show you how to do that in some of the range demos that I'm going to be doing. It's possible to do. It's not as quick or efficient as the CST or SOP sling, but it can still be done. It's not that big a deal. Talking about the sling itself, the sling is 1.25 inches wide. It's heavy-duty sling webbing, and it's a sling webbing we're particularly happy with at this point. We've gone a lot of different directions on sling webbing over the past 20 years. We've gone with stuff that was perhaps too stiff, or we've gone with stuff that was a little not stiff enough. This is right in Goldilocks territory. It is perfect in terms of not being too stiff, not being too flimsy, just right, not abrasive. We're very happy with it, and it's very consistent stuff. All of the stitch points that bear any kind of stress whatsoever are, of course, bar tacked. We don't mess around with, you know, double stitches, quad stitches, things like that. These are all heavy-duty bar tack machines that apply these stitches. The sling itself comes in a couple of different variations. The most basic variation, I'll show this here. This is a number 014 universal Cqb sling. It comes with no adapters. It's designed to be used with weapons that have existing side-mounted sling swivels at the front and the rear. And in its most basic form, it arrives with this simple loop that engages this stop buckle. The next step up from there in terms of added features, it would be the emergency release buckle. This is an optional feature, but what's useful about this is should you get tangled up in some obstacles that you're trying to negotiate, this allows you to rapidly and efficiently disengage from the sling, get yourself out of trouble, and then get the sling back on your body and connected and be ready to go. So it's a valuable feature. Some people don't necessarily see that. That's fine. We sell both versions. Go with whatever you want. The sling itself, the design, is what we call an open circuit sling. And what that means is the sling at its termination point is not stitched, so that this sling can be completely field stripped all the way down to its most basic component. And the purposes that you would do that for would be for instance, setting it up for a left-handed configuration, and of course making adjustments and trimming. And because it's that open circuit design, because we designed this for your typical extra large North American male, and I understand that there are people that are going to be smaller in stature. We come in all shapes and sizes, but we designed this to fit pretty much your average big guy. And then from there, if you are of a smaller statured person, once you've made your adjustments, for instance, at your body loop, you get that at about, you get your adjustment buckle at about the midpoint, you get your stop buckle where it feels nice and comfortable, you may end up with a couple feet of webbing hanging off of the end here. And what's nice about that is this can be easily trimmed and heat sealed all on your own, and you can basically custom fit this to your particular body type. And the way that's done is the webbing, if you look at it up close, there are little peaks and valleys that are a process of actually weaving the webbing. And what you do is you get yourself a nice sharp pair of scissors, like a set of Fiskars, and you would trim right there in one of those rows. Make a nice straight trim, and from there, just use a simple lighter. A torch would be nice. What would be ideal is if you had a really hot piece of metal that you could rest it against to heat seal it. But the lighter works just fine. Just be careful in that you keep the lighter moving and make it a nice uniform burn. But you are going to want to heat seal that so that the webbing doesn't begin unraveling, because if you don't do that, it will begin to unravel on you. But in the end, you can come out with a sling that's perfectly sized for you. An example that I was going to do with this is I have a 7-year-old grandson, and I was going to basically size a sling for me, and I'm about 6'2", 290. I'm a big frame dude, and I was going to size out a sling for me, and then I was going to trim it all the way down so it fit my 7-year-old grandson, who goes about 65 pounds. He's a little string bean. But that is, of course, totally possible. And I may do a variation of that, but YouTube freaks out when you start hanging guns off of kids. And I get that. That I don't know. They do a lot of weird stuff, but that one I guess makes a little bit of sense. But getting back to the video, as I said, completely open circuit design. Sorry, I had to figure out where the heck I was at. So with the open circuit design, again, as I said, completely ambidextrous. There's no right or left-hand configuration on this. So we've talked about the typical setup points. I want to cover one more thing here in terms of the actual term points when I talk about 3-point slings. And all we're talking about here is the different points on the weapon that the sling influences as far as movement and control. So your first point of control would be at the rear. That would be point 1, and that controls the movement and positioning of the buttstock. The second point of control would be at the front of the weapon. That controls, obviously, the movement and orientation of the front of the weapon. Your third point of control is this stop buckle, and in the case of the CST and SOP sling, it's actually an adjustable cam buckle. But what this does is this controls how the weapon hangs on the body, and it's something that you kind of have to experience rather than me telling you about it. I know I say that a lot, but it is very true. When you're sizing this thing out, once you get everything adjusted and it fits your body just right, play with this buckle a little bit, because it's going to be different for just about everybody. But what this does is this: you move this buckle to the rear, the buttstock will move down in terms of how it hangs on the body. And that's just a fit issue. You can bring it in nice and tight, but I prefer it a little loose myself so that I have a bit more movement. And you want to, as you're sizing this thing, go through your full range of movement. Don't just go into a low ready and point it straight forward. Point it up, point it down, point it left, point it right. Move the weapon through its entire range of movement and get that sling set up and sorted out so that it's comfortable from all of those positions. And then you won't be fighting with that later when you find out that you didn't have enough slack in the sling, which is another, by the way, selling point for the CST and SOP, since that's fully adjustable on the fly. But I believe that's gonna be about it, to be honest with you. There's not much more to say about this. Like I said, basic, straightforward design. Simplest sling, also our least expensive of the entire lineup. So with that, I will go ahead and bring it to a close at this point. Thank you for listening. And as with all of our products, these are manufactured right here in Visalia, California in the United States. And for more information, you can contact us at spectergear.com. With that, I'll bring it to a close. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.